Hey guys, happy Friday. We'll just work through next section, law of cosines here. A couple slides of notes, just talking through the equations. Still dealing with triangle trigonometry. So we're just trying to find a side or an angle of a triangle that's not a right triangle today. We did law of cosines the last couple of days. Quizzes yesterday were pretty good overall, so keep up the good work there. So here we go, law of cosines today. You can always have Lucky pause it anytime you need him to, just to give you guys a little more time as we go. So that's the case there. So law of cosines today, here's what we got. We got, just to find a side, we got three different equations based on our triangles, right? So we got a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cosine a. Remember, big A is an angle, little a is a side, and those two are across from each other. So depending on what we have, these are all the same equation, just used for different letters as you go. So you could always just think of it as one, whatever you're trying to solve for, and then you have the other ones as we go here. Remember, small letters are the side, big letters are the angle. So little a is across from angle A. As we go, that should be familiar. Okay, in order to need to solve, right, we're actually trying to solve for A, B, or C here. So as we actually do that, we need to actually take the square root, correct? So as we take a look here, right, if I have a triangle, bear with me because I'm drawing here. We're going to see how this goes. Um, so if I have A, B, and C, we know little a would be over here, little b would be down here, little c would be over here. Okay, we're always going across. So little c, big C across, little b, big B across, little a, big A across, right? But we're trying to solve for this little a. Right now on the same side of it is going to be the squared. So remember, to actually solve for a, we're going to have to do the square root over here. And if I do the square root on one side, we got to do the square root on the other side. So that's going to be a bigger, longer square root as we go over the top. So we're going to have to be careful when we go to entering these into the calculator. But we have little a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cosine angle A. Remember, right next to the cosine is always our angle. And so that's going to be the one that's actually the degrees as we go. So these are our first four problems we're going to do today are going to deal with those. Next, we're going to talk about how to solve for an angle. Hopefully you remember how to solve for an angle. You know, with solving for angles, we're probably going to use inverses. Okay. So that is the first slide. If you need a little longer, have Lucky stop it here, and you can take a second or two longer. All right. To find an angle, right? We just rearrange the other equation. We will talk through, maybe go through that next week at some point. But we just rearrange that equation to get the cosine A by itself. And so that's how we're going to actually solve for our angle. So we still have the same triangles, little a across from big angle A, side little b across from big angle B, side little c across from big angle C. Okay, so to get this, like I said, we just rearranged the last slide's equations to get there. And anytime we're trying to get to solve for an angle, we know we need to use the inverse, right? So I am actually trying to solve for little big A here this time. So remember, to actually solve for it, we're going to have to do the inverse cosine. Okay, so we're going to use the inverse cosine here. If I do it over there, we know we're going to have to do the inverse cosine over here. Okay, so those two would cross out, and we would just plug the rest of this in. Remember, this would probably all have to be in a big giant parentheses there as we go. So you might want to put this bottom in parentheses too. We'll talk about how to enter that in a second. Okay, so first slide was used to find sides. Second slide here is going to be used to find angles. Okay, so like I said, same thing. We're going to get into working here in a second, but make sure that you have all these notes down before we move on. Okay, so if Lucky needs to pause it, this would be a good spot for that to happen. All right, I'm going to share a different tab here. Let's get into the problems. All right. So here we go. So now we actually have our problem. So we're going to find each measurement. So we're going to start by finding a side, Remember, we're going to find side AC. So as we find AC, we're looking here. We got our A, we have our C. So we know we want to find little b. Okay, so as we take a look, we're going to look back at that equation. We're going to have b squared equals a squared plus c squared minus 2ac cosine of big B. Okay, so that's the equation we're going to use on this one because we need to solve for our little b. That's from the last slide as we went. Okay, and so that is what we are doing here. Okay, so that's what we got as we go. And so we're going to just plug in what we know, right? So as we look here, big A is going to be, of course, across from little a. Big C is going to be across from little c. We don't know little b. So we're going to do b squared here equals, we take a look, our a squared value we know is going to be our 24. So we're just going to plug 24 in for a squared, 24 for a, and then we got to square it. Okay. Plus our c value, we know our c value is going to be that 28. So we're going to do plus 28 squared minus 2. Our little a value we just said was 24. Our little c value we just said was 28. And then we're just going to plug in cosine of b. Big B we know is the angle. So we got our angle here of 115 degrees. Wow, that was bad. I usually would use my iPad, but Zoom wouldn't update, whatever. So we're going to leave it as it is. Now, we could actually go and figure out every single little thing here if we wanted to. I would just plug it all in the calculator at one time rather than spending a whole bunch of time wasting our time doing other things. When we take a quiz on this, I'll probably only let you use the TI-30s. So if you want to, though, it's actually a little easier to enter these into Desmos. To get the b by itself, remember we got to take the square root. So the square root and the squared are going to cancel each other out. Okay, we're going to take the square root of this whole side. Okay, so we're just going to have b equals this whole thing in the parentheses. Okay, as you take a look here, right, you just go second and hit the cos. Well, we're not doing that yet. How about we just hit cosine? Let's try that again. Once again, good mess ups, Dave. All right, here we go. So we are going to just hit the square root button. So remember, we do second x squared. That's going to do a square root, and it's going to open up a parentheses. All right, then I would just do, you can just do 24 squared plus 28 squared. You can actually just enter this in pretty much as is. Minus 2 times 24 times 28 times the cosine of 115. Some of you probably think this handwriting is better than my actual handwriting, so good luck with that. Okay, so we're just going to enter that in real quick. All right, and when I plug that in, it says we're rounded to the 10th. I got 43.908. So our answer here is just going to be 43.9. All right, so that's what we have there for that one. Okay, so we got 43.9 there as we go. That is for solving for AC, which we know is going to be little b. All right, so that's the case with that one. Hopefully we are okay. Like I said, if you need a little more time, have Lucky pause it, and we'll head to the next one here in a second. If you guys are good, you can just go ahead to the next one. Okay, so that's our first example. Here we go, second example time. Second example, we're just going to have straight up values. Okay, so on this one, like I said the other day, you can draw the picture if you want, but you should also just be able to plug it into our equation. So this time I know angle A and I'm trying to find little a. So let's actually just solve for A. So we're going to say A squared equals, I'm just going to plug it in this time. You guys can look at the equation. Actually, I'll plug it in the equation here. B squared plus C squared minus 2B C cosine of our angle A. All right, so that's what we have there. We know we're trying to solve for A squared. Eventually, since we're trying to find for a side, we are going to take the square root. Okay, our B value we know is 23. We're going to square that. Plus our C value we know is 28. We are going to square that. Okay, minus 2, B value is still 23. C value is still 28. And then we're going to have the cosine of big angle A, and we know that is going to be 103. Okay, remember to solve for a side, we got to take the square root. So let's take the square root of both sides. Okay, as we plug that in, plug it in the same way. You can just enter pretty much as is again. And when we plug that in, we should get 40.03. So little a is going to be 40.03, which I end up getting just 40 or 40.0 since we are rounding to the 10th is what we should get for a. Okay, so that's how we're going to solve for sides. Lucky, you can go ahead and pause it 5 to 7 minutes. Let them try out 3 and 4. I will put answers up here in a second and probably actually work through it as well. Won't really talk through those as much or use the setups, but I'll just plug the numbers in there as we go. Okay, so that's the case there. Pause it, let them work on 3 and 4 for a minute, like 5 to 7 minutes. There's 3 set up and everything there. Hopefully you guys looked at that, got that figured out. Go to 4 now and go through that. This one I'm just gonna set up and not actually show you the equation. All right, so there is number 4. All right, now we'll get into angles here. So let's talk through the angles and what to do with that. So our setups are going to be a tiny bit different here as we go. All right. So as we take a look, all right, we're trying to solve for an angle. So anytime we are trying to solve for an angle, remember we are going to use the inverse. All right. So we got to make sure to use the inverse here as we go. All right. So what do I want to solve for? I want to solve for angle C. Okay. So we're going to use cosine of our big angle C. All right. So this one, we're going to use what? We are going to use A squared plus B squared minus C squared all over 2AB. All right, so let's just plug things in. So we're going to have the cosine of angle C. We still don't know what angle C is. Equals our A value we know is 10 because it's across from big A. So we're going to do 10 squared plus our B value we know is our our 18 here. So because it's across from big B, so we got 18 squared minus our C value we know is our 13. So we got 13 squared all over 2. Our A value is 10 and our B value is 18. All right, this one, what I would probably do when I enter this in the calculator in a second, I'm probably going to enter the whole top in parentheses, the whole bottom in parentheses as we go. So we'll talk about that. But remember, in order to solve for an angle, we got to use the inverse. So if I do the inverse on one side, we need to do the inverse of the whole other thing. So we're going to do the inverse of this whole side. So when I entered it, I'm going to do C. We're going to do second cosine. So that's going to give us our inverse cosine. That's going to pop open a parentheses. I would probably open a second parentheses, do the whole 10 squared plus 18 squared plus, minus 13 squared. Okay, and then I'm going to hit the divide button. And on the bottom, I would probably do 2 times 10 times 18, all in a parentheses. Okay, I would not do 3 individual parentheses, kind of like I did up here. I would actually probably do it as a multiplication there. So when you plug that in, right, I would open that 10 squared plus 18 squared minus 13 squared, close the first one, divide by 2 times 10 times 18. Close that one. Make sure you open the parentheses on the bottom as well. Okay, if you want to close the whole thing, you can. It doesn't actually matter that much. Okay, so big C, remember we're trying to solve for an angle, so make sure it is in degrees. And I got 44.9. Hopefully you plug that in correctly as well. So we got 44.9 degrees. All right, so that's how we're going to solve for angles. Remember, to solve for an angle, we got to use the inverse cosine. All right, so that's the one where I actually give you the picture. Let's do one where I just give you some measurements here. All right, so this one shouldn't be too bad to set up. We just got cosine of A, okay, equals our B squared, which is our 13.6 squared, plus our 16.5 squared. And then we're going to minus the A squared, which is our 25.A squared. Right, and so that all is going to be over 2 times our B value, which is 13.6, times our C value, which is 16.5. Right, I know I didn't write out this whole equation. You should have it down in front of you anyways. Okay, so that's the case there. Remember, in order to solve this, we're going to use our inverse. So to solve for this, we're going to do our inverse cosine. And then we're going to plug this all in. So we got 13.6 squared plus 16.5 squared minus 25.8 squared. Remember, I would put that all in parentheses up on top. Then I would hit our divide button. And on the bottom, I would do 2 times 13.6 times 16.5. Close that whole thing. So when we plug that in, we get 117.7 when we round because we're rounding to the 10th still. So we're going to get 117.7 degrees. All right, same thing we did before, 5 to 7 minutes. Try out 7 and 8, see how they go. Okay, and I will put them up here. I know you might not listen to me talk through and just do the problems. Don't forget Monday, I will not be here. You are going to have probably 10 to 12 of these here as we go. Maybe a couple more. We'll see how I'm feeling in a couple minutes when I write that worksheet. But that will be due at the end of class on Monday. You will turn that in. So make sure you are knowing what to do. I would make sure to bring this back so you have an idea of what to do as well. Okay, so 5 to 7 minutes, I'll work through, pause the video, Luck, have them work through it, and then they can double check work here in a couple of minutes. I'm just going to plug this in. Angle C should be at 42.4 degrees. All right, so that should be 7. 8 here. I'm just going to do the final setup here as we go instead of doing it all. So hopefully you've done all the other setup. So big C should equal 75 degrees. Hope you guys had a great Friday. Please come and see me sometime today. Remember, I'm leaving pretty much right at 3 o'clock today. So if you're really struggling, come and see me so we can try and figure something out throughout the course of the day. And that's what I got there. Have a great weekend, everyone. See you guys all on Tuesday.